There's a stretch of road near my home that I've driven 1,000 times, but one forgotten morning at summer's end, it showed me a secret it was never meant to reveal. I live in a quiet community tucked away in the northern woods, a place where most folks know each other and excitement is a rare commodity. This was years back, before everyone was glued to a screen. To be frank, not much about this area has changed, which makes the memory of what I saw so vivid. It was late August, that brief window where the air holds a new chill and the long days feel numbered. I was on my usual commute, a lonely two-lane road weaving between pine stands and forgotten fields. About 20 minutes into the drive, I noticed a vehicle parked on the gravel shoulder. It was a faded green station wagon, looking like it had been stationary for some time. It was just sitting there, tilted slightly, its windows dark. Now, I'm not a reckless person, but I was raised to lend a hand when it's needed. As I rolled closer, I eased off the gas to get a clearer view. The car was completely silent, and I couldn't make out a soul inside. The driver's seat was empty, the passenger side was vacant, and the back seat held nothing but shadows. It was odd, for sure, especially at that hour, but not immediately terrifying. Out here, if your car dies, you start walking. I assumed the driver had headed to one of the distant houses for assistance, so I continued on to my job and put it out of my mind. The workday came and went, and on my return trip, I saw the very same car in the identical location. The only difference was that now the passenger door was swung wide open. It definitely had not been open that morning, I was certain. I slowed my car again, straining to see any movement, but the landscape was still. No one was walking on the road, no fresh footprints in the dirt, just that silent, open-mouthed car. This time, a knot tightened in my stomach. I drove until my phone had a single bar of service and called the sheriff's non-emergency number. I reported the location and the description of the vehicle, and the dispatcher said they'd send a car to take a look. The next morning, on my way to work, the station wagon was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that was the conclusion. About a week later, however, a brief segment on the local news caught my ear. They were reporting on a missing individual. The report mentioned an abandoned car discovered on a rural route that matched the one I'd seen. My blood ran cold. I turned up the volume. They didn't give a name, but said the car belonged to a man from another county who never arrived at his destination. The news anchor stated that the police found no evidence of a crime and had no leads. I've never truly trusted what I hear on the news, so their version of events felt incomplete. The silence of that open door is what screamed the loudest. The eerie part was realizing I might have been the only one who saw it all begin. I tried to forget about it, but the mystery gnawed at me. In a place where nothing ever happens, an event like this is impossible to ignore. The following day, I phoned my cousin. Let's call him David. He's a volunteer with the local fire department, and they often share information with the county police. I asked if he'd heard anything about an abandoned car or a missing person. He confirmed that a bulletin had gone around about a vehicle and a missing man. I asked what the plan was. He wasn't sure, but thought a search party might be organized soon. I told him we should volunteer, maybe get a few of the other firefighters involved. He was puzzled by my insistence, but I managed to persuade him. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure why I felt so connected to it. I suppose because I was a witness, however distant. I let David handle the coordination with the authorities. A few days later, with official permission, he had a small team assembled. The police were grateful for the extra eyes. It wasn't a huge operation, just a handful of officers, a few firefighters, and myself. We focused on a thin stretch of woodland and a series of drainage canals that ran parallel to the highway. From a car, it looks like flat, manageable land, but on foot, it's easy to see how someone could vanish. We broke into teams. I stuck with David. After about 45 minutes, a call came over the radio. Another team had found something in a thicket. We all hurried to their position. It was a decaying tool shed, partially submerged in the earth and choked by vines. You would never spot it from the road. The door was ajar, and the hasp on the lock was broken. Inside, it was damp and dark, filled with the smell of decay. But as my vision adjusted, I saw indications of recent activity. There were scattered protein bar wrappers and a crushed plastic bottle. The team fanned out to inspect the area around the shed. One of the firefighters called out that he'd spotted something near the rear corner. We all gathered around. There was a neat, round puncture in one of the lower wall planks. The edges of the hole were sharp and inward pointing, nothing like natural woodware. It looked precisely like the entry point of a bullet. We combed the ground inside and outside for a spent cartridge, a bullet, any drop of blood, but found absolutely nothing. Just that one chilling hole in the wood. The lead officer called it in, and his demeanor shifted instantly. He gathered us and stated they would be securing the scene. Then he specifically requested that I, the only non-official present, depart immediately. I felt a surge of frustration, but I had to obey. I drove away. When I called David that night, his answers were evasive. After some pressing, he revealed that the fire crew was also dismissed not long after I was. The police had sealed off the entire area. In the weeks that followed, I waited for any news. David's connections at the department claimed to know nothing, which I found highly unusual. The news never ran another story. It was as if the entire incident had been erased from existence. Eventually, I had to see for myself. I drove back to the search area, confident I could retrace my steps. I parked and walked for what felt like hours, tracing the drainage ditches with precision. The landscape was identical, the same trees, the same sky, but the shed was gone. Not a trace. I stood there, completely alone, the only sound a soft wind moving through the tall grass. It was peaceful, yet profoundly unsettling. The only logical conclusions were that my memory had completely failed me, or the structure had been physically removed. The latter seemed like an impossibly drastic measure for a simple missing person case. I left with a deep, cold unease. I was left with the undeniable sensation that I had brushed against something significant in those final days of summer. Something I was permitted to see for just a moment before the curtain was drawn shut. Now, every year when the season turns and that first cold breeze blows, my mind goes back to that empty car and that single, inexplicable hole in the wall of a shed that seemingly vanished from the earth. If you felt that chill, make sure to hit the like button and share your own strange tales in the comments below. And for more true stories that linger in your mind long after they're over, make sure you're subscribed to Midnight Zephyr.